You can do everything right and still end up with something completely wrong. That's what building without clear instructions feels like. It doesn't start as a big mistake. It starts small. You find a plan that looks decent. A few diagrams, maybe a materials list, a couple of steps. Enough to convince you it's workable. So you begin. You measure. You cut. You follow what's there. And for a while, it feels like progress. But then something subtle happens. A step doesn't fully explain what to do next. A diagram shows the final shape, but not how the pieces connect in sequence. You pause. You try to fill in the gap yourself. It seems minor, so you move forward. Then a second gap appears. Now you're not just following instructions, you're interpreting them. Making small decisions the plan should have made for you. You double-check measurements. You compare pieces. You adjust slightly just to make things fit. And this is where the frustration starts building. Because nothing is obviously wrong yet, but nothing feels fully right either. You keep going anyway. You've already invested time. Materials are cut. Stopping now feels worse than pushing through. So you continue. By the time you reach the middle of the project, the gaps compound. A panel doesn't align perfectly. A joint feels tighter than it should. You start wondering if the issue is your technique or the plan itself. You go back to reread earlier steps, hoping you missed something. But the truth is, there was nothing to find. The instructions were never complete to begin with. And now you're stuck in that uncomfortable space where every next step feels uncertain. You hesitate before each cut. You second-guess decisions that should have been obvious. And the more you think, the slower you move. Eventually, one of two things happens. You either push through and finish something that doesn't quite match what you imagined, or you stop altogether, leaving the project half-built, telling yourself you'll come back to it later. Most people don't. And over time, this pattern repeats. Different project. Same experience. You start with motivation and end with frustration. It's easy to assume the problem is skill. That maybe you're not experienced enough. Not precise enough. Not ready for projects like this. But that's not what's really happening. The real issue isn't your ability to build. It's the absence of structure in what you're following. When instructions are incomplete, your brain has to constantly switch roles from builder to problem solver to interpreter. Instead of executing, you're guessing. And guessing introduces friction. Not just physical mistakes, but mental fatigue. Every unclear step forces you to slow down, evaluate, decide, and hope you're right. That constant uncertainty drains momentum. And without momentum, projects stall. That's why even simple builds can feel overwhelming. Not because they're complex, but because the path isn't clearly defined. Think about any process where the outcome matters. Cooking, assembling furniture, even following directions to a place you've never been. When the instructions are clear, you move forward with confidence. When they're vague, every step feels heavier. You stop trusting the process. And eventually, you stop enjoying it. That's what most people experience when they build without clear instructions. Not failure from lack of effort, but friction from lack of clarity. And once you understand that, something shifts. Because it removes the weight of self-doubt. It reframes the experience. You're not struggling because you can't build. You're struggling because you've been working without a complete map. When the structure is clear, when every step connects logically, when measurements align, when the sequence makes sense, the experience changes entirely. You spend less time thinking and more time doing. Less time correcting and more time progressing. The build becomes smoother. Not because you suddenly improved overnight, but because the process stopped working against you. And that's the difference most people never get to see. They assume frustration is part of the craft. That wasted materials, abandoned projects, and constant second guessing are just how it goes. But it's not. It's what happens when clarity is missing. If you want to understand how a structured approach changes that experience, and what a complete system actually looks like, you'll find a practical breakdown linked in the description. And if this kind of insight helps you see your projects differently, you can subscribe for more. Because once the process makes sense, everything else starts to follow.